Do you find parents reluctant to go to a child psychologist because it's an admission of failure?
Sometimes. Sometimes, quite frankly, I'll maybe work with the wife, but the husband won't show up because he doesn't want to feel like he's been part of the problem. Sometimes the kid will refuse to go. In fact, many times with angry children, that's what happens. The parents will come, say, well, we wanted to bring Johnny, but he wouldn't come. He's sitting out in the car. Or the child will come in and said, I agreed to come to the office, but I didn't say I was going to say anything, so I'm out of here. What I find interesting for parents, and through this message I hope to give them some hope, is the parents should stick with it anyways. If the child refused to come, well, then the parents could use it as an avenue to get assistance. If they brought the child in hopes they could drop him off, like you drop off your car and he'd get fixed, that's not going to work. But for parents to say, okay, you sit in the car, but we're going to go upstairs and we're going to talk to the doctor and we're going to try and find some answers to help bring some peace to our house. That's the message. Children will eventually want to come up and be part of that because they want to bring peace too. But the parents say, you're going to go because something's wrong with you and this doctor's going to fix you and I'm tired of it. If you don't do this, then you're going to be grounded. That's probably part of the problem that has led to a lot of anger in the home anyways. And along those lines, it means helping the parents shift away from that pattern so they're more willing to get help.
How do you start when a family comes in and sits down in your office? What's the first thing you say to them?
That's an interesting question because probably many people watching this haven't been through that. But usually the first thing is tell me why you're here. What is it you're looking for? And they'll describe that. And with angry families, the very many times I hear is our life at home is unbelievable. Our child's screaming and fighting. We're fighting all the time. My child refuses to do homework, we fight about that. I ask him to do the dishes, you fight about that. I ask her to pick up her clothes in a room, we fight about that. I do that, and then my wife or my husband enters in, and we yell at each other, and these fights go on all day until we're so exhausted. Now, I've seen kids very young, too, that when asking them what are their initial concerns, remember a 4-year-old that once came to my office that after I was talking to the parents, the kid just would not let his parents talk. And that's not uncommon to see that. The kids are very frightened what parents are going to say. And when they tried to get him to go to the waiting room, then he's ended up smashing up things in the waiting room of the office, just filled with that much rage. Generally what happens in those first moments or minutes of counseling, it's really trying to engage and say, what is it you need? What can we help you with? From that point, you move on and says, now tell me some of the background. What happened in the family? What's the history? Tell me the medical background of the child. What was the pregnancy, labor, and delivery like? Any medical problems? What's the history in the family? Anybody else who has difficulties? And then after some time, then you shift towards thinking, okay, let's define what we can do about this. Now, 10 years ago, in the era of a different kind of medical insurance plans, you could take more time to do that. In today's world of managed care, they want you to move quickly towards some solutions. And sometimes it's very helpful for families, and sometimes families need a lot of help just to understand that they can trust you, to work with you. It can take some time.
I'll go to your book, where you start off in the beginning asking some questions of parents. And you say, as a parent, do you feel caught in a vicious cycle of shouting and resorting to threats in order to get good behavior from your children? Do you dread your child's reactions when you correct them? Does your child make threats when he or she doesn't get their way? Do you feel intimidated by your child, even avoiding interactions you know will be unpleasant? You find parents are sometimes afraid of their kids?
Oh, absolutely. I've even seen strangers, total strangers involved with that, where I see them at the shopping mall or some kids threatening and screaming at their parents, you better buy this for me, or you better do this, and the parent trying to negotiate with them. But I know some parents, I mean, I remember one mom tell me that in a group I was talking to folks, and she said she felt like she was in a spider web, that she was afraid to do anything for fear, just like in a spider web, you move and you're pounced upon. And she would find that when the child was coming home, she'd try and be busy or be outside or leave with a 10 or 12-year-old child. That happens in some homes to that extreme. In other times, it's when a child starts their screaming or battles or whatever that might be, some parents just say, I don't know what to do. I say no, and it gets worse. So sometimes it can be to the level of fear, and sometimes it's the level of frustration.
How do you decide whether it is a genetic thing or a chemical thing or a learned behavior? How do you decide that?
Well, in my book, I talk about both aspects, the biological and the learned behavior in the home, and talk about family patterns, which we can get into later. But from the aspect of the genetic and biological, I always recommend for families, if they see this continuing on to the level that really concerns parents, what they need to do is speak with their child's pediatrician. Because sometimes patterns of anger can be related to medical problems. It could be the medication the child takes. It can be related to some allergies and irritability, medical problems that affect a child's blood sugar and mood. Many, many things can be part of that. Some types of seizures can affect those things. It's important to rule those out and discuss it with the pediatrician or family physician. But having ruled those out, one can then be thinking, if this is overwhelming for the family, and we're finding the family is getting harmed by the things that you just mentioned, or our vacations getting ruined, or trips in the car are a chore, anytime we ask a child to take responsibility, that may be time to call in and ask for some assistance. Now, having done so, there are some diagnosable psychological disorders. Just to rattle off a few, things like attention disorder, bipolar disorder, depression, oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder. Under some of those definitions, sometimes the anger can fit in. But what I try to do in this book is help parents who, yes, those may be some diagnoses for some kids, but there's an awful lot of kids who do not have those labels. And even if they have the label, what are you going to do? Medication? Maybe in some cases, but still parents need the tools of day-to-day how to handle that.
Could you talk a little bit about temper and people, adults and kids who have tempers?
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that's genetic? I mean, are some people just born with a shorter fuse than other people?
Well, interesting you say that, because there has been some research on temperament, and there being different characteristics of that, like general mood, activity level, response to new situations, ability to tolerate frustration. And there are suggestions that in our own neurological wiring, there may be differences about that. I mean, some people are just calm. You know, people sometimes refer to folks of certain nationalities, you know, as hot-headed or even-tempered or whatever that might be. A lot of that may be environmental as well. Some of them may be patterns of behavior. If you are learned to constantly drive yourself and not eating right and not sleeping right and exhausting yourself, that can be another biological component that can come in too. But many parts are learned. The families of angry children, many parts of those are learned. And if it's all biological, I guess the good news for families is that you're off the hook. The bad news is nothing you can do about it, except maybe change something biologically, maybe medication or diet or some other things. It's tough to hear for a parent that it's the patterns in the home that contribute, at least contribute, but probably significantly contribute. But that actually helps parents understand if you cause the problem, there's something you can do to change it.
What kind of patterns in the home can cause a temper?
Well, I talk about 4 kinds in the book. One is the troubled family. Now, the troubled family is the family that may have difficulties such as just something that's caused pain in the family, a divorce, a death, a chronic illness, economic problems, housing problems, moving, something, some outside force that's causing a lot of pain in the family. And under those circumstances, what I say is the child's anger is a reaction to that pain. In fact, it's the voice of pain. It's a child crying out and saying, I can't take this. I'm overwhelmed by the problems going on here, and I need someone to comfort me and help me on that. Under those circumstances, the parent's goal then is to help address the pain. If it is issues of divorce or family problems, take care of those things. If there is a chronic illness, if there's a death, that's comfort and nurturance that child needs. It will not help those children if all you do is punish them. If mom and dad are causing such strife in the child's life that the child reacts with anger, it will not help if all the parents do is then punish the child more, because they may simply hide those feelings but still have a lot of rage. A second type of family is the frantic family. We see a lot of those in today's world, the parents who feel they've got to get their child involved with every activity possible. They have to sign them up for every sport, and ballet, and music, and after-school activity, and tutoring, and their family is rushing all the time, eating their meals on the run, in the drive-through lanes at McDonald's, on the cell phone, doing things, do the homework in the back seat. And the kids don't have a chance to be kids because they're overscheduled, over-involved, and underloved. And what the kid's reaction is that under those circumstances, anger is the voice of stress. There's too much stress in the kid's life. And all of us who are busy lives, whatever that might be, recognize that there's some breaking point at which we just get irritable and difficult because we are overscheduled and over-involved. And under those circumstances, what the parents need to do is throttle back. What are we doing too much of? He doesn't have to be on everything. Choose one activity and doing it well. Doesn't have to keep up with the Joneses on every possible thing to be involved with. Doesn't have to be shuttled from babysitter to child care, back and forth. Slow down. The third type of family is the indulging family. The indulging family give in to the anger. They reward the anger. The kid has a desire, and they'll find a way of giving into it. Sometimes not intentionally, sometimes it's just because the parent doesn't know any better. Oh, I thought that he needed this. I thought that was the right thing to do. Or Sometimes parents will say things like, I don't want my child to suffer. I feel guilty if my child has wants. Or, I have to keep up with the Joneses. Yes, these shoes are $120, and yes, it's the 4th pair he's had this year, and I'm sorry he keeps changing his mind, but these are in style, and I got to buy those for him. Those kind of parents who feel they need to indulge that when the child has a tantrum or battle. Or sometimes it's parents who say, you know, he's suffered too much already. We need to just let him have whatever he wants. Kids shouldn't suffer. Life's been difficult. And so they indulge it. And so kids' anger under those circumstances is the voice of desire, and they give it. So kids learn, if you want something, have a tantrum. You'll get it. The 4th family type is the angry family. And this is where the parents themselves, one or both, has got a temper. They may be themselves susceptible to road rage or attacking, yelling at the clerk or the guy at the car dealer or whatever that might be. And the children learn that if you want to have power and influence over someone, that's what you do. And maybe the parent who yells at their spouse, go do this, why don't you take care of this? And the kids learn, well, if that's how you have power over another person, then I'm going to do this too. And the kids learn to do that. Sometimes they will not necessarily show it at home because they don't want to come head-to-head with the other person who's yelling at them. But they may show it around other places as well and bully people because they think anger is the voice of power. So under those circumstances, the troubled family, the frantic family, the indulging family, and the angry family, kids can learn these styles of angry interactions.
You mentioned in your book the concept of venting, where someone will just blow up and then they'll be fine after that. And is that an okay thing? I mean, is it a safety valve or is it a bad thing?
Well, I think to the extent that we are stressed and you need to burn off some stress, that's probably a good thing. But by that I mean, if a person is had a tough day at work, you go take a walk, you go jogging, you exercise to burn off some of that energy so you're not, and it helps reducing your stress so you don't attack other people. But for a long time, and psychologists are guilty of this, and many parent manuals and self-help books describe that it's okay to vent. Go out and smash some dishes, punch a punching bag. In fact, as psychologists, we get these catalogs in the mail that have little things that you can use in your office, such as pillows shaped like a person that kids can beat or parents can beat, or bonking sticks that are inflatable, things you can hit your spouse with, I guess, in marriage therapy. Those things always seem silly to me. Yeah, well, some people do. Luckily, not a lot. But I think some people, because they operate from the belief that if you're mad, vent it. Well, we're not volcanoes. We're not pressure cookers that you have to release that. Because a lot of times anger is just something going on in our own minds. We keep the anger moving, and what we need to do is change our thoughts, not just let out the emotion. Now, in studies that have actually, kids have seen models of other children venting. What that has actually had an impact upon is increasing the likelihood that they will be aggressive. And so it has the opposite effect. So what we're better off doing, instead of saying, well, he's upset, let him go ahead and yell for a while. Well, venting is one of the reasons when people get in arguments. And sometimes when people get in an argument, that's their goal. They had a bad day, they're taking it out on somebody. I always wish people had like those, remember those mood rings, you know? Like some kind of signal on their forehead that says, I'm just venting, leave me alone. All right, leave me alone. I guess if a person's going to say, just leave me alone, I got to go blow off some steam, I'm going to yell for a while, well, go do that, don't harm anybody else. But again, think of that phrase I said, that it's sometimes okay to be angry, never okay to be mean. If venting starts going to that mean category, you're picking on your brother and sister, you're yelling at your mom and dad, you cross the line. We need to find another way for you to handle that.
Can I ask you a little bit about yourself?
Sure.
You are, as we mentioned earlier, a Pennsylvania state senator. When you had a career as a child psychologist, what possessed you to run for office?
Maybe I needed some therapy. I didn't listen to myself. That was a situation where, really from the time I was a kid, I thought of holding a leadership position in government. In fact, I remember once when I was in high school, someone said to me that he was going to be president someday. And I said, yeah, I'll be a senator before you're president. Well, he's not president yet. And over the years, when I would work on children's and families issues, or I would myself lobby people in government locally or state, talk to them about programs in education or family issues, there was a lot of well-intended people that sometimes just did not understand. And when I would serve on committees or commissions to help work on issues, I'd always feel, oh, we're getting these things done, we have these ideas, but there's a little bit of disconnect. How do we move to the next step? When Mike Fisher, who was my state senator, decided to move on to Attorney General, or he sometimes jokingly tells a story that I moved him out of office, I saw this was the time. And I knew that issues involving health care and issues involving children were very timely, and instead of having someone else do that, I thought, well, maybe it's time that I did that. Now, it's been, I might add, it's not an easy thing for families to do. When one is in a political office, whether it's on a local school board level or municipal official to state level and beyond, it's a big time-consuming factor. You're away from home a lot. You're trying to take care of a lot of problems. And it pays different from a psychologist, too, but that's okay. You know, it's a matter that, you know, I felt at this time I wanted to dedicate that area of energy in my life to helping families upstream instead of downstream where it was in my office, help them prevent some problems.
So you decided to run for office and you ran and you won?
I won.